Thank you, Cathaoirleach.
The motion.
I move the motion and just...
Sorry, Deputy, the opening slot is 20 minutes.
Yeah, and I'm just taking 5 and then my colleagues should be joining me. So thanks very much, Cathaoirleach, and I'm delighted to get the opportunity to raise this issue in relation to the early years childcare sector. As we know, we are in the cost of living crisis. And many people now, particularly coming into the winter months, are going to be facing, increased fuel costs, increased energy costs. Childcare is a cost that is a burden on families. We also know that it particularly affects women. It affects them participating fully in the workforce, maybe returning to work, returning to education. And we also know that any reports that are done in relation to poverty and child poverty point to access to affordable childcare as being one of the key factors in coming out of poverty. So the fees and the level of fees that people are paying are really, really important. And in advance of the budget, we wanted to highlight that issue and call on the Minister and the Government to really seriously address the fees issue. So we're asking for governmental support and support of all TDs tonight in our motion. I do also want to speak about some of the other issues in relation to this sector as well, because obviously we know fees, we're talking about fees that could be anywhere in the region of €800 to €1,300 per child per month, which is colossal. But there is also 2 other very important parts to this sector as well, and that is those that work in the sector. They are very well qualified, often to degree level. And yet, as we know, the wages don't often reflect, I suppose, the very valuable work that they are doing. And I know that there has been some moves, and in fairness, to acknowledge that, and there is ongoing pay talks, even I believe at the moment as well, and hopefully they will be successful. But I do think it's important to highlight that issue as well. And just something that was brought to my attention today is a group that are actually advertising for people to work in childcare abroad, a group from Spain that are coming over on the 10th of October. So, I mean, we're training people here to a high level, and yet there's a possibility of them leaving to another sector for better paying conditions. So I think we're at a really crucial moment in this sector, because right now we have the providers, we have the workers, and it's unlike some other sectors where the funding is available, but maybe the staffing is an issue. And I see, Minister Abbott, you're here as well. Like the disability sector, we're crying out for staff, for example. We don't want the same thing to happen in the early years childcare setting. We have the staff here now, so it's important, I think, that we look at the issues that affect the workers, the wage increases, and then also the providers. And we've had this debate numerous occasions in this chamber and in other forums as well. And there is some people that are doing okay in terms of the core funding and everything. And, I do want to acknowledge that, because I know last year, and I think in fairness, I said it around the time of the budget last year too, that there was some positive moves. But, however, there is a cohort of providers that are struggling. Some of the smaller providers, some of the more kind of sessional services that are maybe just ECCE only, and particularly we're seeing this in rural areas, and they are really struggling in terms of the administrative burden. And I know that's something that we've spoken about before. Nobody has an issue with regulation, with paperwork, with the administration that obviously does need to be done, but there hasn't been a huge amount of additional financial support, I suppose, to help providers in that situation. And there is many providers that feel like one of the calls that they would say is that one size doesn't fit all. And I think that is a fair statement to make for some of them. And I do think that we need to look at that. I think I've always been an advocate for looking at the 3 sectors together: the issues that affect the providers, the issues that affect the workers working in the sector, and then, of course, the fees, which is the primary, I suppose, focus of this motion, because we do know, as I've said, that the fees are, it's becoming like very, very difficult for people. And we're hearing stories all the time of people deciding that they'll put off having a second child, or they're not really planning out if their child is going to be in school before they have a second one. And other things as well that I want to very briefly touch on is the availability of places, because we've heard reports for people saying that they nearly feel as soon as they find out they're pregnant, they have to start planning for a place for the early years. And I do think the three things are very much interlinked and connected. And if we address the staffing issues and the issues affecting providers, I think it will help in relation to some of the accessibility of actual places. But as I say, the primary focus of tonight is the fees. Thanks, Cathaoirleach.
Deputy, next is Deputy Louise O'Reilly.
Thank you, Cathaoirleach. And I want to start by thanking my colleague, Dr. Kathleen Funchion, for bringing forward this motion this evening, but also for all of the work that she has done and the engagement that she does on a daily basis with providers and with early childhood educators. We all know it's an essential service, but like many essential services in this state, it has suffered from significant neglect by successive governments, and it's been more or less left to the private sector to deliver the service. This has resulted in many areas lacking a functioning childcare service to meet the needs of the population. It's especially true in areas that have a large young population and rural areas. And in my own constituency, we have both a large young population and a significant proportion of rural areas. This means that the childcare network across North County Dublin is under strain where it exists, and in some areas it doesn't exist at all. So that's the first issue that affects parents, is the lack of available childcare. Where a family is lucky enough to secure childcare, the second issue kicks in, and that's the cost. The fees are still too high. They're pushing many families to the brink. The cost often forces parents to make life-altering decisions, to move home where they can to be closer to relatives, to change jobs, to work part-time, to work more on social shifts, to be free during the working day, to refuse promotion opportunities, to leave the workforce, and as we see with many young people now, to decide not to have kids altogether, and that's really not where we want to be. In most cases, it's women who are directly affected when childcare becomes an issue. However, there are indirect effects which are felt throughout the family as a whole. Partners who have to work excessively to provide, parents who work hard, so hard that they don't see their kids or their partner, grandparents who don't get to experience retirement, families who have to go without just so that they can pay childcare fees. The stress of this situation can put pressure on family relationships and family dynamics, and there are very few areas of life that aren't impacted by this. And for this reason, parents want affordable, local and high-quality childcare, and they want it now. They were promised that fees would be decreased by 25% in Budget 2024, and the Government must keep its word. But the reality is that the 25% decrease in fees in Budget 2023, while welcome, only slightly eased the financial burden on parents, given that many families continue to pay sky-high childcare fees, and precious few of them saw a reduction of actually 25%. Then there are the workers in the service who must remain at the front of our minds during any of these debates. Low pay drives highly qualified childcare staff out of their careers of choice, and we've seen this, and it's become especially acute since COVID. The workers in our early years services deserve decent pay. I'm very concerned that the Government have taken a hands-off approach in the childcare pay talks. They need to be recommenced as a matter of urgency, and the Minister has to ensure that the staff in this sector receive wage increases through sustained government investment. And Minister, here's a perfect example of the impact of high childcare costs and the threatened closure of services. This is an email I got, and I spoke to the mum in question yesterday. She lives in Lusk, and what she says is, if she cannot access affordable childcare, and these are her words, I will not be able to afford to continue to send my child, and there is literally no space in any other local creche or in any other childcare provider for a place in ECCE. My child will be completely pulled from his routine, with his early educational development massively impacted. I will be forced to give up work as I won't have any childcare, and we will end up in massive financial debt. We have a large mortgage. This is the reality of what will happen to families if this matter is not resolved. And she says, have you any answers? Can you tell me what's being done? Parents are very clear about what they need. They need access to affordable quality childcare, and they want that delivered by well-paid professionals. And Minister, my own experience is one of the transformative impact of access to affordable childcare. At the age of 21, I would not have been able to go back to college were I not able to access affordable childcare. I certainly wouldn't have been able to continue to work. I would have been forced into social welfare. I would not have had those options. And being able to access that education was the bedrock on which we were able to build our small little family. It was absolutely essential. And for those parents who don't have it, it is the stress that it creates is unimaginable. So, Minister, we don't need any more shoulder shrugging. We need you to roll up your sleeves and become proactive with childcare workers and their wage talks. You need to make sure that the Minister for Finance hears that funding must be made available and that results are how it will be judged.
Thanks, Chair. And I'd just like to acknowledge and thank Kathleen Funchion for bringing forward this motion. It's a really important motion, and I suppose, like everybody in this House, I have continuously got parents ringing up the office looking for advice and support and helping them to find a place in childcare in their local community. And parents are desperate to find childcare. Most have conceded that affordable childcare in Dublin is impossible to find. They've accepted that. The sky-high childcare fees and lack of places means that a whole section of society are being locked out of employment at a time when this government is meant to be working for increased gender equality. In reality, what we are seeing is gender inequality increasing as more mothers are forced to stay at home. They are being denied the opportunity to return to the profession or back to education. This is a result of this government's continued failure to deliver affordable childcare. And we are witnessing a substantial cohort of workers being locked out of the workplace. And there is no doubt that this is causing severe damage to our economy and our society. The hands-off approach of this government has failed, and as a result, it is workers and their families who are being left to pay the price. We are fortunate that in Dublin Bay South that we have some brilliant community childcare. Places like Ringsend and Irishtown Community Centre and St Andrews Resource Centre. But, I've spoken to them regularly, and they are demoralised with the amount of paperwork, the amount of box ticking, the amount of inspections that are taking place, and there's the amount of work they have to put in that doesn't ensure that the children are being cared for. It doesn't. These childcare facilities do amazing work and are the heart of the community. These childcare facilities are a core element in building our community, and they provide a valuable resource.
Minister, I'm here today to speak on Sinn Féin's motion on childcare costs. Many thanks to my colleague, Deputy Funchion, and her team for bringing this urgent issue before the House. Minister, ordinary workers and families already struggling to make ends meet in this cost-of-living crisis are being further battered by increasing and unaffordable childcare costs. Families are already reeling from the effects of multiple mortgage hikes, ever-increasing food and energy bills, and let's not forget your government's recent increase to petrol and diesel prices. Childcare costs are as much as rent or mortgage payments, and families simply cannot afford them. So a lot of parents, mainly women, are either forced to leave the workforce or even can't complete joining and then end up rejecting career opportunities because they can't afford the cost of childcare. And Deputy O'Reilly also mentioned that to you. This government made a promise in Budget 2024 the fees would be decreased by 25%. You must stick to that promise. For all children providers, both public and private, must be supported to stay viable. In my own constituency of South Kildare, I am aware of many childcare facilities who will be forced to close if you don't take action, Minister. Minister, the childcare workforce is being diminished due to poor pay conditions. This has been very apparent in Kildare South, where many childcare facilities cannot get workers needed to staff the service. Sinn Féin's detailed and fully costed plan would see childcare fees cut by 2/3, giving families much needed breathing space while also making a huge investment in our children's future and allowing parents peace of mind regarding the children's care. I urge all TDs in this House to support Sinn Féin's motion today. Thank you, Cahill.
Deputy Donegal O'Leary, 2.5 minutes.
Minister, my wife recently received a call from a childcare provider about we had put our son's name down on a waiting list for a childcare place around the time that he was born. It was just a couple of months ago. Problem is, he's 4 tomorrow. That's the situation that you're looking at, that you could be waiting 3 or 4 years nearly to get a call. Now, obviously, it's not the same in every instance, but the fact is, if you move to Cork tomorrow morning looking for a full-time childcare place, you would be nearly laughed out of it. The places are simply not there. Even part-time places are extremely difficult to come by, and you could be waiting. You could wait in a very long time. You could be waiting a very long time. And that's before you even get to the cost. That is absolutely crippling families. It's been said so many times, it's absolutely true. Like a second mortgage, more than a mortgage for so many. We have a particular, and I've raised this with you directly before, Minister, in fairness, you've heard me out, but what we're looking for is direct involvement from the Department of Relationships. We have a particular problem in Cork at the minute in relation to capacity. We have had a number of providers either close or face a change of ownership or potentially close, and that's on top of the existing lack of places. So what I would be encouraging you and your department to do, Minister, is to get directly involved in that. And there's a couple of things that could involve. First, where there's a change of undertaking, I hope that TUSLA will be able to facilitate the processing of that in the most expedient way possible. I am also minded to mention the Before 5 Centre, which is due to reopen, but to ensure that that happens as quickly as possible and with the existing staff. But Minister, the model that we have, it's certainly, I'm sure it's not where you would like to start from, it's where we are starting from, it's what we have to deal with. But I wouldn't like to be in a situation where 15 years down the road, we're still heavily relying on subsidising the private model. We need a public system of childcare, and I think it is vitally important that the state increases its footprint in this area. And I think that, I've spoken to you about this before, there is the scope to do that in the context of Cork right now. And there are public bodies who I think can help lead this. But across the board, I think we need to be looking at this to try and address the issues of supply, the issue of being able to plan. We need to be able to plan for demographic growth and where additional childcare is going to be needed. Because this, I suppose, allowing the market to dictate it is just not going to succeed, ultimately, in my view, Minister. So, look, I think what's also needed, obviously, is in relation to the sustainability of it. And far too long, people working in the sector have been treated too poorly and on too poor wages, and it's crucial that we get that right. But ultimately, this is a public good. It is not an optional for so many people. It is the lack of access to childcare and the lack of access to affordable childcare is meaning people are leaving the workforce and being unable to return to the workforce. It is a public good, and it is high time that we treat it as that and invest in it accordingly.
Thank you, Deputy. And next is Deputy Denise Mitchell.
Good Cahirlock. Minister, the reality is that childcare fees are completely unaffordable for many working families. And many people feel that they're being hung out to dry despite repeated promises of making that you will make childcare affordable. It's almost viewed as a luxury spend, and it's not really seen as that this is an important thing for families and particularly women to get back to work. Now, I've had many emails from people in my constituency, Minister, who are paying crazy amounts of money, with some telling me that they're going to have to give up their job because it's actually costing them to go to work. Now this, as we all know, has a knock-on effect, particularly on women who want to participate in the workforce or those who want to return to education. And Minister, we know now that many people are putting their lives on hold because of it. Now the government are on the record saying that the cost of childcare will decrease by 25% in this budget. Now, I welcome this, Minister, if it happens, but with the cost of living crisis and with fees already sky high, it may be little relief to many families. Now, the Department need to act and deliver a national fee structure with a clear plan on how they're going to seriously reduce this burden on people. And Minister, I have to say, I find it too concerning that the government have taken a backseat in dealing with the talks on childcare workers' pay. It's a sector that already feels undervalued by government. Now, Minister, if there was a Sinn Féin minister sitting where you're sitting tonight, that minister would cut fees by 2/3 based on 2022 levels. And we would move legislation to ensure fees never reach these crazy prices again. Now, I know the Minister is well intentioned, but Minister, fiddling around at the edges rather than tackling the core of this crisis is not going to make the burden currently faced by families any less of a heavy one to carry.
Oh, good, Carlock. Minister, childcare has become a significant issue for both parents and childcare professionals, posing challenges to both groups in terms of costs for parents and proper pay for those working in the childcare sector. The cost of childcare is placing an unbearable burden on many parents. This has led in some cases to mothers leaving the workforce because of the enormous financial strain on a family's finances caused by the high cost of childcare, which can be as high as a mortgage payment for some. Additionally, despite their qualifications and responsibilities, childcare professionals do not receive proper remuneration for their work. These issues need to be addressed as a matter of urgency, and I hope some of the things you've said you will follow through on. They are not new issues, as we have been raising and talking about them for years here in the Dáil. It is essential to make childcare more affordable for parents, and it is essential that there is proper investment by government in the childcare sector. Investing in childcare is not only an investment in our future, but it also benefits families and society as a whole. Affordable and reliable childcare allows parents to participate fully in the workforce without compromising their children's well-being. It reduces stress among parents by providing them with peace of mind, knowing that their children are well cared for while they work. Proper remuneration for childcare professionals is crucial. Childcare professionals need to be paid a wage which properly reflects the value of their skills and responsibilities and the importance of their work. This will also ensure that retention rates in the sector are improved and there is not an adverse turnover of professionals in the sector. Making childcare more affordable and accessible will not only benefit families but also have long-term positive impacts on society as a whole. Sinn Féin proposes that childcare fees be cut by 2/3 from 22 levels through increased investment, because quality childcare is an investment in the future of our children. Ensuring their well-being and development while supporting working families is contributing to the economy. Thank you.
The government repeatedly say that they recognise that our country is going through a cost of living crisis and that they understand the financial difficulties families and grandparents are going through. Yet time and time again they vote against any measures brought forward by the opposition, particularly my own party Sinn Féin, that would alleviate the high cost of childcare early learning and remodel it to a mandatory national fee structure system. I do hope this very important issue for families in County Wexford and across the country will not fall on deaf ears once again. It is within the government's power to act and to ease the burden on parents. I will go as far to say that childcare and early learning is imperative for the whole country and for a sustainable, robust economy into the future. Public investment is the key solution to helping struggling parents and guardians, and will support both the private and community services, who at present are rapidly becoming unviable. In fact, new research by the Federation of Early Childhood Providers stated that 264 providers will be unable to stay in business next year. In our motion brought forward by Deputy Kathleen Funchion before the Dáil today, Sinn Féin is calling for the government to give families a break by cutting the cost of childcare to 2/3 from 2022 levels. The 25% decrease in fees in budget 2023 was positive help. However, it fell way short of relieving the financial burden on parents and guardians. Childcare fees are still far too high. The percentage didn't go far enough, given the fact that many families continue to pay sky-high childcare fees, paying between €800 in most areas and up to €1,300 per child per month in cities. With the ever-increasing costs faced by families and the rising energy costs in making childcare an unattainable luxury. When parents cannot access affordable childcare, this will make it harder for them to keep a job or re-enter the workforce and further education. This will impact women even more so. The government also needs to allocate additional funding to provide fair play for professionals working in the sector, as poor pay is driving highly qualified childcare staff out of their careers in search of work with a fair wage. Minister, you promised that you would increase that childcare fees will be decreased by 25% in budget 2024. Is this promise going to be honoured? Parents want and need affordable, local and high-quality childcare. Providers need financial assistance. Thank you.
I also want to commend Deputy Kathleen Function for bringing the bill before the House, and I welcome the chance to talk about it today, as it's something I referred to last week as we were making the case to the government to think again about increasing excise this month, given the pressures families and businesses are under. Yet, despite the overwhelming challenge that faces families, the pace with which meaningful response has issued has not reflected the urgency of the situation for many. I was contacted by a doctor recently who told me that, like many others, the creche she sends her 2 young children to will be closing in solidarity with this campaign. This creche has a staffing shortage that is due to the difficulty it experiences in attracting qualified graduates to the sector because of the rate of pay. Another parent spoke of the closure of the baby room and the community provider because of staff shortages as well. These are the same providers who will pay increased overheads, with less in the way of income because of poor pay is driving highly qualified childcare staff out of their careers. Parents are paying more in every direction and to cope with their pressures. Sky-high childcare fees are now forcing some parents to stay away from work or further education. And when this choice must be made, it is predominantly women who take the brunt. So we're talking about an issue that has profound consequences throughout families. Parents just want affordable, local and high-quality childcare, and they want it now, Minister. For these reasons, we are urging you to keep your word and decrease fees by a further 25% in this budget and support all providers, private and community, to ensure their services remain viable. Furthermore, when childcare providers signed up to the new core funding model last year, we warned you not to leave them high and dry, yet we hear the sector highlight how the core funding scheme doesn't adequately cover the cost of the increased overheads. And you've asked what would Sinn Féin do here. We will cut childcare fees for families by 2/3 from the 22 levels to make them affordable for parents by increasing public investment. Furthermore, fee reduction under Sinn Féin would be underpinned by legislation and would be controlled through contractual agreement with providers. Minister, I see in your response, and you've said it by every metric, you're on the right track when it comes to childcare. And on the back of your page, you're talking about establishing a new group. That's not very encouraging if you have to go in establish a new group after 3 years. And I know you mean well, and I've worked with you on other things. So take a meaningful action now, Minister, and make childcare affordable on a private and community basis, and allow families to function as they're supposed to.
I'll be bringing up a number of issues here. I will be looking for ministerial and departmental engagement. First of all, I want to talk about the Merhevenamore Community Youth Project after school service. Look, I asked for the information, so I'm going to provide it as was provided to me. We are a community-based after-school service in a large urban housing estate in a disadvantaged area of Dundalk. The after-school service is based on what was originally a local authority house within the estate. After-school operates its service from 1:15 to 6:15 in normal times. Currently, numbers are 24. Capacity is 27, but we can't increase this due to staffing issues. There's currently 14 on a waiting list. And I would just add that you're talking about projects I'm going to be talking about that do huge work with really disadvantaged kids, and not all these kids are referrals, but probably due to the efforts that are put in by these projects, that means they're not. Staffing issue. At this point, we require 2 part-time staff. We're currently relying on CE staff. Obviously, this isn't perfect from the project's point of view, or even from those on CE, of which there is no uptake at the minute. Core funding restricts fee increases, but the reality, so does cost of living crisis and all the reality, and sometimes even those that are paying fees, this project would accept them, paid very slowly and not necessarily on a weekly or on a monthly basis. We operate 2 school collections daily at both local schools within the estate at 1:15 and 2:15. This demands 3 or 4 members of staff to be out of the building at one time. Therefore, going forward, we are looking at this collection service to be inoperable. Look, we just need action in relation to this. The Minister visited the house in Cox's. They also have an after-school project. Now, they're in a better circumstance than most, as we share the building with other projects and admin, management fees and shared running costs. Basically, we have a capacity of 32 and are full with a waiting list of 40. That's the reality of what we could offer. The difficulties encountering is excessive paperwork. What they're looking for at the minute, why they couldn't have a service level agreement that would encompass everything that they do with TUSLA and Justice. This would be far less cumbersome, particularly when you're talking about NCS, CCSP, core funding. I have a full booklet from the List Nanogue playgroup in Merhevenamore. You would have also visited the Holy Family Community Creche, and you would have dealt with some of these issues. Look, worrying increase, and in fairness, Minister, this will relate to yourself, worrying increase of children with additional needs attending our service, marked increase in physical, cognitive and behavioural issues along with diagnosed condition. Coming with a serious impact to our staff. Some of the children can predominate their time. Obviously, Welcome is the AIM programme, but we are struggling with current allowances due to the increase of number of children accessing the programme at level 7. Look, I could give you the stats and we could get into that. They are capping numbers to saying the ratios won't work. And this is probably a service that is offering a service that maybe an awful lot of other creches aren't. But here, I could probably continue on for another hour, but I don't think the Chan Corla would allow me. I will engage with you later.
First of all, I want to thank Kathleen Function for putting down this motion, and as has been said, it is very timely in the context of, going into September and children going back to school, and at the same time we have the issue of childcare in crisis across the country, it has to be said, in many cases. And that's the reality that people are facing. And I've listened to a lot of the debate, and I don't in any way doubt the sincerity of the Minister or anyone in the department are trying to deliver this. But I feel that the system is broken, that there's a difficulty here that isn't been acknowledged and isn't been overcome. And I recently had a constituent that spoke to me. She's a couple that they moved to Leitrim from another part of the country, so they don't have a family network around them. And they have 3 children. She's working for the past 10 years in a local accountancy firm, and she has given up work recently because of 2 issues. First of all, childcare. She has 2 children that are in preschool, and childcare costs have gone up. And secondly, the other child, which is going to primary school, this year for the first year, 4 years going to primary school, and this year no school bus. Can't get the bus, has to drive the child to school. Added those 2 together, said, look, I can't continue working. So she just stopped working. Now, that is not good for our society, that we have a system where we have services that we are meant to provide that is supposed to put people, activate them, that they can be contributing, be part of our community and make a positive contribution, and also better for the children that they would be going on the school bus for climate change and all kinds of other ideas, and indeed for the children in preschool education and all the benefits and advantages, it has to be said. And this isn't just a child-minding service so the parents can go to work. It has a huge advantage for the children that are engaged there, that the system of education which is in place and the skills that are there that are brought to bear from the very, very talented workforce who are hugely underpaid in all of that sector. So I think we've really looked at this in 3 ways. First of all, we have the issue that the costs are clearly too high for so many families, and we want to see a situation where they will be reduced by 2/3 of what was the 2022 level. Now, I've heard other speakers indeed mention, that we need to be moving toward a system where we would have a public childcare service, just like we have a public education service, which is free at the point of entry. And certainly we're not opposed to that, and that's the direction of travel we feel it needs to go in. But we also have budget constraints right now that we need to look at. We also have to recognise, I think, that we're in the context of a huge cost of living crisis, and that cost of living crisis has a bearing on the childcare providers as well. Their heating bills, all of their electricity bills, all of their costs have gone up, and yet the only way they can try and make a living is to charge more to the parents of the children that they're looking after and providing a service to, and that is having another impact. So it's a spiral which has gone out of control. And really what needs to happen here is that government need to intervene in a very positive and direct way to ensure that they can deliver for those children, for their parents and for the providers, and indeed for the people who work in the service, because many of the people who work in the service become very disillusioned, and they're there for a few years and they walk away because they say, look, I have to make a living somewhere else where I'll be appreciated and where I'll be looked after, and they don't feel they're getting that as committed as they are to the whole childcare practice and all of that. And many of them have studied, have got degrees, have got diplomas, have put a lot into this. And they turn around after it all and say, look, I made a wrong choice here. And they walk away. And I think that is also an indictment on the service and on the system. So, Minister, the proposals we're putting to you, and I note, in your speech you mentioned a number of things, and one of them you talked about, about apprenticeships and employment permits and about having a plan around all of that. That's to be welcomed. If that's coming, that's to be welcomed. We need to see that, but we're a bit late seeing it, to be frank about it. We should have had this quite some time ago. We should have been looking at this crisis coming down the road, particularly for the provision of staff in childcare services. There's a number of questions you asked in respect of that. I leave that to my colleague to reply to you, and I'm sure she will reply to you very directly in respect of those questions. But, that's fair enough. But the real question here, is not for the opposition. The real question here is for government. Government are the ones that have control over this situation, that have been in government, the main party in government, Fine Gael have been there for over a decade. I don't see them here at all tonight. And yet, we are in this crisis. So there needs to be a recognition of that. Opposition have a job to do to hold the people in government to account, but government have the job to do to deliver. And as far as childcare is concerned in this country, it is very clear that that delivery has been very, very short.
Thank you very much, Cathaoirleach. I just want to thank everybody for their contributions and for those that are supporting the motion. I also, again, acknowledge that there has been work done in this sector, and as I said, I did say that last year at budget time as well. I also do welcome aspects of the speech in relation to AIM. If that is going to be extended, that would be really welcome and fantastic. And again, the administration that we regularly talk about, the burden of that, and it's not that anyone has an issue with it, but they just need the support to actually be able to, maybe hire somebody to deal with the admin. So I'm in here since 2016, and in some way, shape or form, apart from being the education spokesperson for a very short time, I've always been in this portfolio, either as a junior spokesperson or now in the last number of years as the main spokesperson. So I've done a huge amount of work in this sector. When I was on the committee in the last all term, I was the rapporteur. Minister Abbott was on that committee as well. I was the rapporteur for a report specifically in relation to the workers in the early years sector, and we got unanimous support at that time in the Dáil for a motion that we brought forward in relation to the workers. Actually, something popped up on my Facebook today from 2017 from our budget launch, where I was delighted that an ask that I had in for the workers was acknowledged in our own budget. So this isn't something that we've just kind of come to the table. This is something for me that I've been working on for years. And last year, in answer to the specific question about our policy, we launched our very comprehensive policy in July of 2022. It still remains our policy to date, and I don't have a difficulty answering very directly those questions, because I do want to see not only fees freezing but being reduced, and of course we want to see the workers in the sector being recognised and specific ring-fenced. I'd love to see a wage scale coming into that sector, and it's something that we've allowed for in our budget over the last number of years. And the issue isn't core funding. The issue is how it's administered for certain providers, for those small providers that very clearly were saying last week, one size doesn't fit all. Yes, there's people that are doing fine. Yes, there's people that are doing better. But there is services there that are really, really struggling, and they might fall outside of the box. They're the sessional services. A lot of them are in the rural areas, and we do need to look at that. So they're the changes that we want to see being made. And I always consistently say, so much so that I'm sure my own colleagues are sick of it at this stage, that we have to look at the three things together. We have to look at those that are providing the service, that are struggling, that want to stay in the sector, that want to open additional rooms. We have to look at those who work in the sector. And as I said earlier, we have people coming in from abroad now trying to recruit our early years educators. We need to hang on to them. We need to ensure they're valued. And then we have to look at the fees, because it is often an obstacle for people returning to work, returning to education, or staying or progressing in your job. Many of us will understand that constant juggle of trying to organise kids around work. And, when you have access to quality, affordable childcare, it's a total game changer. One thing I do want to say as well is that I'm really glad to see how the debate has changed from when we first started speaking about this in 2016, in that people really identify with those three sections. They do understand, because for a long time people only associated with an issue of fees and parents. And of course it is an issue, and you know, I'm guilty of that at times as well. You just think of like, how am I going to get to work? But actually the benefits for children with the ECCE in terms of like, you know, school readiness, but even in the 0 to 3 and that very important part of kids that's just play. So there's so many benefits to children as well. I know some people made reference to that, but it is important that we remember that. And I'm glad to see that people really have started to understand the sector a bit better and understand that those 3 things are really important: the providers, the workers, and the fees in relation to parents. So at this point, I know that we're not getting the support of government. But I'm glad that we've been able to have this debate. Our own budget is being launched this week. We will have our proposals contained in that, but we, as I said, have our full policy that we launched in July 2022, and that's very much what we want to see, those 3 sectors being looked after, because I think we have an opportunity now to ensure that this is a really, really good sector. I don't want to see a situation where we can't get staff because they've all gone away. Or that that we're forcing so many women out of the workforce, when we're in here on another day talking about how we need to promote women and ensure that they can get back to work and ensure that they can, for example, enter politics. So, you know, it's really important that those 3 sectors are looked at, and I'll leave it at that, Cathaoirleach. Thank you.